Good morning. Good morning. This is Michael Wynn with Oasis Ministries here with my wife,
Jesse.
and got some exciting things to talk about. Before we get into the Word, we're going to be in chapter 1 of 1 Samuel. We've been through Judges, we've been through Ruth. I'm excited to get into the prophets and the kingship. Before we get into all this, I want to make an offer to you. We have a return to soul winning package. This is something Dad is extremely passionate about. You can ask Jesse, you can ask most people here, if you've been out to eat with Dad, Dad doesn't go anywhere without witnessing. And Dad doesn't think that's a call on his life. Dad teaches you that's a call on all of our lives. So we've put together this thing, and something that I really love about this, it comes with a little card, has some verses on it. On the back, you put 5 names of people you're praying about. And we'll send you one of these little, what are they, like a bracelet, just a silicone bracelet.
Yeah, just a silicone.
Weatherproof, showerproof, whatever you need. And you put this bracelet on, it comes in a bunch of colors. Whatever color you'd like. And when you wear it, every time you see that bracelet, you remember to pray for those 5 people. Now, I want to tell you something. I wore this bracelet, and 4 of the 5 people were in church. 4 of the 5. And I wore the bracelet till the words came off. I wore the bracelet till it looked rough. But it reminded me, every time I saw that, like when I would pray over food, I would name drop these people. When I was praying, me and Jesse, whenever we do a long travel, we always pray for protection. I'd also name drop these things, and it brings to your remembrance all the time the importance of souls. Mm-hmm. So I encourage you, if you go through our studio and walk through here, you'll see a lot of people with these cards taped to their monitors with the names. Mm-hmm. And it just reminds them, I got to pray for this person. This person is in my life, in my hands. I have to seek God on their behalf. So I challenge you, we'll put the link in the description. An amazing package, comes with a book, kind of teaches you nice ways of soul winning, good ways to approach it, a bunch of stories from Dad, things that work. So get this, be a part of this, and it's super cheap, free shipping. We're not really doing this as a way to make money or even raise money for Haiti. We're doing this as a way to just help souls. So I challenge you, get your package today. Turning it over to Jesse. Jesse's going to jump us into 1 Samuel. I'm not sure what chapter or verse, so let's follow through with her.
I am starting in 1 Samuel chapter 1. So last week I felt like Ruth was my Bible hero. She went through a lot in her circumstances, decided to follow God. It's this amazing story. If you haven't seen last week's video, just give it a quick listen. It's a pretty short, Led by the Word podcast video. But I have a new hero, and her name is Hannah. And if you don't know, Hannah is the mother of Samuel. Spoiler alert. So we start off with Hannah's story, really before Samuel, obviously. And I just want to say, Hannah had a rough go of it. I mean, right from the jump. Like, just an absolutely rough time. So she was wife 1 or 2, it doesn't say, of this gentleman named, I want to pronounce his name right, Elkanah. So Elkanah had 2 wives, and one of them was Hannah. So the other wife had children, had no problem having children, had lots of children with this man. Hannah was barren. She had no children. So every year, the 3 of them plus the kids would go up to the temple. I think we said it was in Shiloh, to worship and offer like a yearly sacrifice. And every year, for like whatever reason, I guess it's because they were divvying out the portions, this other wife would give Hannah like the hardest time and run her down and be like, "Ha ha, you have no kids." Which, first of all, like, lady, you already have kids. So on top of that, you're like being mean to this poor girl that doesn't have any kids. And I don't know if it's because in the word it says Elkanah loved Hannah. It didn't specifically said he loved her more than the other wife, but I don't know if that was causing like a spirit
One was name dropped.
Jealousy. I don't know. Anyway, so this was like a constant reoccurring thing every year. And so Hannah was like getting really distraught about it and was crying about it, just absolutely just distraught. So then her husband comes to her, and instead of comforting her, he said, "Am I not better than 10 sons to you?" So there was an opportunity for them to be like comforting one another, whatever. And he just like took it very personal, made it about himself, and been like, got really offended. And yeah, that's easy for you to say, dude, you already have kids, like there was an opportunity for them to come together, and he just made it about himself. So I think it's safe to say Hannah did not have a lot of support at home. Literally, the other wife is attacking her. Her husband is not supporting her, trying to love her through this. So Hannah does the only thing she really can do, really any of us can do, and that's pray. So after they get done eating this particular meal, she goes to the temple to pray. And, she's crying out bitterly, whatever. But then Eli, the priest, accuses her of coming to the temple and praying drunk, which was like a big no-no. So she has like no support at home, and then the man of God is basically just calling her out on something that she's doing right, which was praying. She was doing the right thing, and he's like, gosh, isn't it early in the morning for you to be drunk? And it's like, this woman cannot catch a break from anybody. But she doesn't cower down, run out, or whatever. She explains to him, I'm crying out from my soul, out of bitterness, and, this is my real true prayer. And he said, okay, well, go about your way. I'm sure the Lord will hear you. And so I love that Hannah does get up after this prayer. And there's, I think, verse 18, that it says, her countenance was no more sad. And I love that Hannah had so much faith in God answering her prayer, her request for a child, that she was like, okay, I have peace about this. I'm not going to be sad anymore. I'm going to go up. I'm not going to be sad anymore. So they go home, and lo and behold, she gets pregnant, and Hannah has Samuel. So there's a couple of different translations of the name Samuel, but one of the Hebrew translations means God has heard, which I think is so fitting and beautiful for this situation, because truly God heard Hannah's prayer for a child, Samuel. And so I just feel like that's a perfect fitting name for that. So Hannah's vow is, Lord, if you give me this man child, I'll bring him back, and he will serve you like the whole days of his life. Razor won't touch his head, all of this. So, of course, she has a child, so she has to bring him back to Eli, right? Because he's the high priest. So she brings Samuel to Eli, and I always thought that would be like so hard. I couldn't imagine giving up this child that you obviously desperately wanted. You were distraught because you didn't have it. You cried out to the Lord, enough to make a vow, and then she has to give him to someone else, after he's weaned. And I always thought, man, that's got to be so hard. But chapter 2, like the first several verses are Hannah's like song to the Lord about how amazing he is, and like
rejoicing.
Yes, singing his praises. The Bible doesn't mention any hesitation of her giving over Samuel. And then when she gets there, she's like praising God out loud. She tells Eli specifically, like a testimony style, like, I'm the woman that was praying, that you thought was drunk, by the way. But anyway, and Lord's heard my cry, and here's my son. I'm giving him back to you. He's kind of your responsibility now. It was just all this, like you said, like a rejoicing thing. It was so encouraging, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. And then something we don't talk about is Hannah actually had additional children after Samuel. The Bible tells us in 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 21, that she had 3 sons and 2 daughters. And the verse before that implies that she received this blessing of children because she gave Samuel back to the Lord. Eli basically said, be blessed because you've done this. And then immediately it says, oh yeah, and she had 3 sons and 2 daughters.
It took me to the lepers where, all of them were healed. All of them were given a Samuel.
Yeah.
But she went back in praise and was given wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
Far more than just a Samuel.
It was incredible. And we don't talk about that a lot. Like that, that kind of escaped my mind. But that's like in our lives too. Like if we cry out to the Lord, if we feel we have nothing and he gives us something, it's like, it goes back to the law of giving and receiving. We talk about this all the time when we're giving financial funds or whatever. But whatever you give, you're able to receive more abundantly. So if you, yes, that applies financially, of course, but it also applies in mercy. If you give mercy, you receive mercy. If you give love, you receive love, and often more abundantly than you give it, which is great because there's a very popular saying, you can't pour from an empty vessel, which is very true. I hear that a lot in church, and I hear that a lot in like mom circles. Like if you're too tired to give the best to your children, your family, your husband, sometimes you have to take a minute, a day or two, and just refill. But a lot of times you get refilled by giving yourself unto the Lord. Like the little bit that you have, if you give it unto the Lord, it does go back to like financial stuff too. If you tithe, you're financially blessed. And I think that's an interesting parallel that we see here with Hannah's firstborn versus her other children that are unnamed.
I was trying to remember, so I had to look it up. 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 7. As every man purposeth in his heart, so let him give. So she felt to give. Mm-hmm. She knew this is what I have to do. I have to give Samuel. But it says, not grudgingly or out of compulsion. For God loveth the cheerful giver. And, I thought the same thing. And I thought it was weird till you explained it so well. I was like, this woman's literally rejoicing. Like you see today, it's an ongoing joke how sad it is. Parents rejoice when their kids finally move out. Just like, oh, finally gone. This woman had what we estimate a 3-year-old she's like, God, and she was praising God and so thankful, just like the leper that came back, so grateful.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, she was no longer just blessed with a Samuel. You said, and I forgot, chapter 2, verse 21, 3 sons and 2 daughters. So she had 6 kids total.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So when you're given, it's not enough for you to give. When you're given time to volunteer, when you're given financial support, when you're given mercy to someone that doesn't even deserve it, you can't just give. You have to give cheerfully to receive the full blessing.
Right.
Babe, that's awesome.
Thanks.
Changes the way I look at some stuff. Okay, so let's make it a pact this week. Whatever gift we give, whatever spiritual thing that we feel in our hearts, God's calling me to do this, I want to give it in a fullness of cheerfulness. I want to be as happy as I can be. I want to be as as satisfied as I can be in the opportunity of this gift. Just a little bit of facts about Samuel. 1st and 2nd Samuel were actually written as one book, and then the translators decided to divide it up. This is one of the 12 books of the Bible, I did not know this, that are categorized as historical books. Did you know in the secular world, they used 1st and 2nd Samuel often for historical facts? I did not know that. That blew my mind. Samuel is, as we know, Jesse's touched on this, Samuel is going to be the prophet established by Christ to establish a kingship in place for Israel. Samuel was a Levite. I thought that was interesting. Samuel is the main character of this book. No big surprise there. He is also the author, but he's not the full author. We have estimates and guesstimates of who is the secondary author, but so much of Samuel was written after his passing, we know there had to be someone else. 1 Samuel covers 100 years. 2 Samuel covers an additional 40. Okay, I'm going to make a statement, and I typed this out so many times, and still blows my mind. Every attempt of God's people to lead themselves failed. Now, it would have been nice if I had a number like 6 attempts, 50 attempts, 20 attempts. But you remember we've been doing this over and over in Judges, and we've been doing this over and over in Deuteronomy. And they did evil in the sight of the Lord. They did evil in the sight of the Lord. And Jessie said it once. She did a whole study on it. And they were punished. And they repented. And they begged for salvation. They got salvation. They lived happy. Then they lived bad. Then they were punished. And it was like a complete 5-piece cycle, just repeating. And some of it was over the course of like the shortest period, I think was 7 years. Some of it in Israel. Now, we talk about they were in bondage in Egypt. They were in bondage in Israel for a while. Like these people, they repeated a cycle over and over and over. But it doesn't always have to go this way. And I'm not talking about Saul. Saul fails them. I'm not talking about David. David fails them. I'm not talking about Solomon. Solomon fails them. We go all the way. Josiah. Josiah is one of my favorite kings I can't wait to get to. But there is a king that come that does not fail them. And I'm reading all this, and it makes me so sad just hearing the history and how this stuff over and just repeatedly. We're in chapter 3. We hear more of issues in Israel, but when we get to the coming of Christ, and then we hear of him going away, and then we're waiting on his secondary return. This is a king that will not fail us. Mm-hmm. You're looking at Israel, and you're looking at all their despair. We were never designed to lead ourselves. We weren't. We're failing people. We cannot do it. We have to have a mindset of daily, I need God. If you think you can do one day without God, there's a problem. If you think I can do 45 minutes without God, there's a problem. Because I'm going to let you know right now, I can't do nothing without Him. And we have to have that understanding. Any of our good decisions come from Him. Any of our wisdom comes from Him. Any of our glory in our spirit comes from Him. We're just people. Mm-hmm. And if you look at people left to their devices, this is from Numbers chapter 14 to Samuel. I just grabbed the Bible. It's terrible. It is so, so, so sad. Okay, so Samuel here, he was dropped off at the temple/tabernacle. The real original temple isn't built until David builds it. So they call this the temple. It's the first permanent tabernacle built in Shiloh. And they found it in 2013. And it's amazing. You think they found the altar where Samuel did sacrifice. They found the platform. It's not big at all. They found the spot where Hannah cried. I got chills now. Like, think of that. You can go there to Shiloh, and you can see the spot where Hannah cried, and you can see the spot where Eli comes out saying you're drunken because your lips are moving, but there's no words coming out of your lips. The reality is she's praying to God, and the words to say out loud are too painful to say. Mm-hmm. So Eli needs to back off. This woman's praying, but I do love that Eli says, "Oh," so he confronts her out of anger. But when she tells him, he says, "You know what? Go forth. You've prayed to God. This is going to happen." In so many words, in Michael words, not King James Version words. I'm going to read a few things here. So 1 Samuel chapter 1:24 is where we roughly get the age. We use that interpretation of the age of weaning for that time. And then at the end of the verse it says he was young. So we believe Samuel was dropped off between the ages of 3 and 4. That's what we believe. 1 Samuel chapter 2 verse 3. I want to read a sad verse here, but it's a good verse. Let's do this. Talk no more exceedingly proud. Let not arrogance come out of your mouth. For the Lord is a God of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed. Now to my thought. 1 Samuel chapter 3. Get over here to 3. I want to read it out of this. My notes are on my phone, but I'm just going to use my Bible here. Chapter 3, chapter 3, verse 1. I didn't have my verse on here. And the child Samuel ministered unto the Lord before Eli. And when the word of the Lord was precious in those days, there was no open vision. So this had me curious. What does that mean? The word of the Lord was precious in those days? Because can we just say his word is precious now?
Yeah.
What it was actually saying is God wasn't speaking to nobody. His word was rare. It was that type of precious. It wasn't just precious in the value of each bit and each tidbit, and there was no vision for the land. So what it was, God wasn't talking to nobody, and God wasn't giving visions to nobody. So my mind, the flesh part of Micah said, well, why wasn't God doing that? Well, why is God not, there's a whole temple here, there's a whole tabernacle here, there's a whole altar here. Why ain't God talking to nobody? And it's not, God's always talking to all of us. God's always reaching for all of us. This is a sad, sad thing if you let this sink in. The people have gotten so wicked, no one was listening. Mm-hmm. And when it goes such a long time of no one listening, there becomes a point where God quits speaking. And what happened was there was a child named Samuel who was listening. And if you're a parent, I want this to sink in. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. He is raised by people that serve a temple but not a God. And he is raised by people, Eli is training him to serve a building but not serve a God, to serve a religion but not serve a God. But the prayers of a mama made this boy a gift to God. Even though he was given to not the best leaders, probably the best leaders of the time, even though he's given to what we're going to call people that are messing up, just human people like Eli, there are so much prayers on this guy that his ears can hear God. Mm-hmm. His call is from God. His life is ordained. His life is guided. And we see such a specialness on Samuel. I think that goes back from a hunger from a mama. Mm. So I don't think we can teach Samuel and the power of Samuel and the leadership of Samuel and the great stories that we're going to get into Samuel without first talking about the greatness of Hannah.
I agree.
Hannah was unbelievable. So, and it's even said, like I said here, talk no more exceedingly proudly, let not arrogance come out of thy mouth, for the Lord is a God of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed. God's not looking for these big, special, proud, knowledgeable people. God's looking simple for someone that will listen. So when you're battling an insecurity and you're in your prayer life and you're like, oh my goodness, I've been online and I've seen high-ranking videos of ministers preach, and I see how they act and how they're so formed, or I listen to my pastor's my hero, or if I go and I've been to this conference and I heard this woman of God teaching, I'm like, man, look at all the ability of this person. That's not what God's looking for in you. God's looking for you to be willing. You may be just as powerful as him one day. You may be just as much ability as him one day. That doesn't matter to me. All that matters to me and matters to God is, are you willing to take time and listen? So this is really, today my conviction is to change my prayer life. I got to quit just praying outward. I got to start praying inward. I got to start praying seeking direction. I got to start praying and listening. We talk about prayer and meditation. A lot of us are praying, not many of us are meditating. We got to take time and say, God, I understand, just like Samuel. I believe without a shadow of a doubt there's a call on each of our lives. I believe that. But God, I can't have that call. I can't walk in that call. I can't understand that call if there is so much other things going on in my ears.
Mm-hmm.
So the enemy's speaking. Let's first say what life's doing. Life's got you full of distractions. Life's got you full of work. Life's got you full of family. Life's got you full of fun. Life got you full of memes. Life got you full of jokes. Life's got everything. And not all this stuff's bad. A lot of this stuff's great stuff. But then we have life, and then we take on top of life, and then we put that there's a literal enemy out there. So the enemy knows if they can hear that voice and they can submit to that call, it's over. Like, there went my big chance. So the enemy, then he's speaking confusion. He's speaking insecurity. He's speaking doubt. He's speaking pain. He's speaking all these things to echo out and to separate you from that voice of God. So I want to stir you up right now. If it takes a fast, so be it. If it takes more prayer, do it. If it takes you to study this word, do it. Find out how to get to that voice. And that, we talk about the still small voice. You know, something that blew my mind, and I never caught this before. God speaks to him, God speaks to him, God speaks to him. Then God reveals himself to him as a form. Mm-hmm. He was there. I never caught that before. I thought it was always just here, here, here. It was here, 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 see. So there's a whole country that doesn't hear God. There's a whole country that doesn't have a vision. But there's one dude that has heard him multiple times, and one dude that has seen him. And in one night, it went from a country in despair to a called man that could lead a country out of darkness. Mm-hmm. And that's one man versus, I don't know how many people were in Israel at this time. I should have looked up the number. Think if you right now, in a small circle of your family, if you could hear God and see him. And I'm not saying you got to see God physically appear in front of you. And I'm not saying you even have to hear a still small voice. But if you can unlock enough in your spirit to be like, I am a spiritual being, and this is just a fleshly body I'm going to live in. And you could start listening to that spirit. One time, I remember, and I feel so honored God used me in this. Me and Jesse was going for a walk, and we always try to keep our heart rate at a certain level when we would do this. And I said, Jesse, I got to pause. I got to send a text. And I told her, and she was like, okay, whatever, no big deal. And I sent the text, and it was like the most perfect timing in this man's life. And I didn't know that. I was walking on my way back. I didn't check my phone no more. When you're walking, you just don't think of things. Mm-hmm. And I told Jesse, I was like, look at that. That was literal hearing. I literally felt something. I heard something. And I didn't hear a small voice. It was just a deep crying out to God, and God led me. I want to do that not once and I can tell a story. I want to be like that daily. Mm-hmm. So we got to submit, and we've got to listen, and we got to meditate. 1 Samuel chapter 3:7. Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, neither was the word of the Lord yet revealed unto him. You may feel you're in this place. Say, I don't know what the Lord sounds like. I don't know what my spirit says. I don't know. The word of the Lord hasn't been revealed unto me yet. Let me encourage you right now. Samuel is roughly 12 years old. He's been in this for 9 years, day and night. His life has been the temple. His life has been the priest. His life has been the call. And he don't know nothing. He's gave so much time to this building that he has no ability in his spirit to what he should be doing in his real call. If you're in a place where you're like, I'm 40, I'm 10, I'm 25, I'm 7 years old, age don't matter, and you're like, I don't know what to hear. I don't know what to see. I don't know. It's not been revealed unto me. That's okay, because it wasn't to Samuel either. Mm-hmm. But this is your starting place. Right now, this moment, today, is the place where you say, I am not going back to a sleeping state until I hear from God. Now, Samuel, he gave us a physical sleeping state of, he's going back to bed, he's going to rest. But I'm talking about a spiritual sleeping state. And say, I'm no longer going to let my spirit just be comfortable where it is. I'm no longer going to let it rest where it is. I'm going to seek after a true living God. And I'm going to find him. Because I want to tell you something that's amazing. When Kara was born, and this is something me and Jesse, we talk about this all the time, and it blows my mind. When she was born, a room full of people, when Jesse spoke, that kid went, huh? Because she knew a voice. Because that voice was always there. That voice was right there beside her. So if you want to get close to that voice, you got to get close to God. There's no way around it. Kara was separated by all sorts of stuff. Kara was in here. There was a literal separation, but she knew that voice because she was closer than every other person in that room. What did you say?
They said, say something to your baby, because she was a cesarean. So if you're not familiar, there's like a whole curtain, and they just shove your baby in your face after it's removed.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, well, say something, because I was in shock. And I was like, hello, baby. And her head whipped so fast towards
Instantly.
me.
I'm not exaggerating. It was.
It startled me. It was so fast.
In a room full of, I don't know how, there were surgeons, there were anesthetics, there were the 3 nurses, there was myself, all of us talking, some of us joking, just, there was a lot of talking in there.
Yeah.
And that baby, when it heard its mama, it turned instantly. I'll never forget that huge emotional part of my life. You can have that spiritually. You can be in a room of crowds. You can be out to eat, and people in some of the most in their lives demonic sins, but you in your spirit can hear God and go to somebody and break down a stronghold.
Amen.
Just like Kara in a room full of chaos, first time she hears in the world, just the first time those ears are hearing, the first time those ears and eyes are going out, she knew that voice of a parent. You can know the voice of your God. Like I said, 9 years Samuel lived in the tabernacle. 9 years he focused on the work. 9 years he focused on what he thought was his purpose. 9 years his duty was to Eli. But then there come that day where Samuel had this realization, I need the word, and I need to understand, I need to listen to God. So one thing I'm thankful for, after I've ripped Eli so much, I got to say, Eli said, oh, that's God. Mm-hmm. You go back. You don't bother me no more. You don't bother me no more. You are listening to a God. And, we talk about the wake up in Samuel's life. We talk about the gift of Hannah. There was a huge wake up call for Eli. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of submission there. Eli could have went back and started throwing stuff, kicking stuff around. I've given my whole life to this. I've been to this temple. But he understood that there was a God speaking to a kid. Could you imagine being the age of Eli and understand everything you've done, but God's going to speak to a child? That had to hurt. Mm-hmm. That had to be crushing. Like Eli's given every part of his existence to this. Even though he's messing up, even though he's focused on the wrong things, he is doing something. Mm-hmm. But Eli said, oh my goodness, God's talking. Mm-hmm. And he knew, here's something he was willing to submit to. If God's talking to the land, things are going to be okay. If God's speaking to this, he knew, and here this is something I want to let talk to me. If God can talk to him, and I'm in the same place as him, I'm going to be okay. Yeah. Dad said, if a plane is crashing and you're on that plane, that all those people can be saved because you're walking with God. Think of all the blessings of people around you, just because if you can get this grasp, I'm going to be a Samuel. And Samuel isn't a mega ministry. Samuel is literally a calling on each of our lives to draw nigh to him. I love this. We hit 3 chapters, talked about 2 totally different perspectives on these characters. The focus is normally all Samuel. I feel Eli and Hannah got a great story too that we need to touch on.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for tuning in with us. This is me and my wife,
Jessie.
Please take a moment and share this with your friends. Send somebody this page. This is Oasis Lot on Facebook. On YouTube, we've launched our new YouTube page. Oh, tell us about Oasis Plus.
Oasis Plus. We're so excited. Jensen, who is behind the camera for all of our Led by the Word podcast, is going to be managing it. So we're very excited. But you're going to see a lot of our podcasts move to this secondary channel. So, of course, Led by the Word, Brother Shane McCann's podcast, Go Ye, Golden Harvest, Papal does, or Brother John Wynn, I guess, to everyone else. You'll be seeing a lot of that, as well as other content. It's not going to just be podcasts, but if you've been enjoying following the podcast, make sure you follow that YouTube channel, because then you can get your notifications for when we drop new podcasts, etc.
If you are on Facebook or any of our audio podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Google, it's going to stay right where it is. So if you're watching on a certain Facebook channel, wherever you are outside of YouTube, nothing changes. Oasis Ministries YouTube, we're taking a different approach for that channel, and this is going to be on Oasis Plus.
Excited.
So excited. Thank you for tuning in with us. Please like, please comment, please share. We got some texts this week of people that have been watching the podcast, and I just got to say how much it touched my heart. I was getting all emotional. You put effort, we study, and it was good to know people are studying along and enjoying this with us. So thank you. God bless you.
God bless you.